The Talvari didn't believe in coincidences. For 3,000 cycles, they had studied the patterns of the cosmos, mapped every probability stream, and calculated the trajectories of civilizations with mathematical precision. So when Ambassador Orla volunteered to marry the human diplomat James Corrigan, as part of the Treaty of Broken Stars, her people saw it as a sacrifice, a noble Talvari offering herself to bind the unpredictable species that had somehow conquered half the Perseus arm in less than 2 centuries. Orla had agreed because she believed in peace. The war between humanity and the Talvari ascendancy had scorched 14 worlds and shattered the ancient balance of power. Humans fought like demons, recovering from losses that should have ended them, adapting to Talvari tactics with terrifying speed. The Ascendancy's war minds had calculated a 94.7% probability of human victory within 8 cycles. The marriage was the alternative, a genetic and cultural bridge, a symbol of unity. She had expected a warrior, perhaps a cunning strategist with cold eyes and colder calculations. James was neither. He met her at the Nexus station with flowers, actual biological flowers, transported across 3 star systems in stasis. White roses, he called them. A human tradition, he explained, his smile warm and genuine. For new beginnings. Orla's twin hearts had fluttered in confusion. Talvari didn't give gifts without strategic purpose. Everything was calculated, measured, optimized. But James simply handed them to her, expecting nothing in return. The wedding was held aboard the Concordia, humanity's diplomatic flagship. Orla wore traditional Talvari ceremonial armor, silver and elegant, every plate bearing the prayers of her ancestors. James wore what humans called a suit, simple, black, oddly formal. When he took her 3-fingered hand in his 5-fingered one, his grip was gentle but steady. "I know this isn't what you chose," he whispered during the ceremony, speaking perfect Talvari, though his accent was charmingly imperfect. "But I promised to make it worthwhile." The first month aboard the Concordia was an exercise in confusion. James didn't behave like any species Orla had studied. He didn't optimize his schedule or calculate social interactions. He was spontaneous, inefficient, beautifully, maddeningly chaotic. He brought her breakfast without being asked. He learned Talvari meditation techniques and practiced them wrong, but with such earnest dedication that her tutors didn't have the heart to correct him. He told jokes that made no logical sense but somehow made her laugh anyway, and he asked questions. Endless questions. What was your homeworld like? What did Talvari dream about? If you could go anywhere in the galaxy, where would it be? Orla found herself answering, sharing things she'd never told anyone. The Talvari didn't encourage personal sharing. It was inefficient, emotionally destabilizing. But with James, inefficiency felt like freedom. 3 months into their marriage, the universe reminded them both that peace was fragile. The Kreshnor arrived. They came from the dark between galaxies, a hive-mind civilization that had consumed 17 galaxies before the Milky Way. The Talvari had known about them for centuries, watching their slow approach with growing dread. The war minds calculated 0 probability of victory. The Kreshnor didn't negotiate. They assimilated or annihilated. The first battle destroyed the Talvari 4th Fleet in 17 minutes. Orla watched the tactical displays in horror as her people's perfect formations were torn apart by the Kreshnor swarm ships. The war minds were screaming contradictory strategies, overwhelmed by an enemy that operated on principles beyond Talvari mathematics. James stood beside her, his face pale but calm. "Too calm. We need to evacuate," Orla said, her voice barely steady. "The Concordia can reach the inner territories before—" "No," James interrupted quietly. She turned to him, confused. "James, the Talvari cannot defeat them." "Our models show—" "Your models don't account for humans," he said, and something in his voice made her twin hearts freeze. She had seen him smile, laugh, stumble through meditation poses. She had never seen him like this. Focused, absolutely certain, with a stillness that reminded her of the moment before a star collapsed. James activated the command console. "This is Commander Corrigan to all human vessels. Implement Protocol Fenrir. Authorization Omega-7 Crimson." Orla's translator struggled with some of the words. "James, what is—" "Do you know why the gods fear humanity, Orla?" James asked, not looking away from the display. "Your people's legends mention gods, don't they? Beings of such power that civilizations worshipped them? The architects, Orla whispered. They created the first sentient races, but they disappeared millennia ago. They didn't disappear, James said softly. They ran. From us. The human fleet moved. Orla had studied human tactics, aggressive, adaptive, unpredictable. But this was different. The ships didn't follow standard formations. They scattered like drops of water, each vessel moving independently, yet somehow in perfect chaotic harmony. And then they did something impossible. They rammed the Kreshnor swarm ships at relativistic speeds. Talvari doctrine forbade such tactics, the loss of resources, the waste of trained personnel. But humans had escape pods that launched milliseconds before impact, turning their ships into kinetic weapons, and the pilots returned for another vessel, ready to do it again. We call it spite, James explained, watching the battle unfold. Your war minds can't calculate it because it's not logical. We lose when the math says we should win. We win when the universe says we should lose. Because we don't fight for probability. We fight because we refuse to quit. The Kreshnor adapted quickly, but humans adapted faster. When ramming stopped working, human ships deployed boarding pods, launching soldiers directly into the hive ships. It was insanity. Suicidal. It was working. Your people calculate the best outcome, James said. We gamble on the impossible outcome. And sometimes, often enough to matter, the universe blinks first. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, the Kreshnor retreated. The hive mind, which had never known defeat, withdrew from a species that fought like the universe owed them victory. Orla found James in their quarters afterward, staring at casualty reports. 37,000 humans dead. He was weeping silently. James, she approached carefully. We won, he said hoarsely. But they were people. Every number is someone who laughed, loved, dreamed. We humans, we carry our dead with us. We remember. And that's why we can't lose, Orla. Because losing means forgetting them. Orla finally understood. The Talvari calculated acceptable losses. Humans mourned each one, and fought harder to ensure they meant something. She sat beside him and took his hand. Teach me, she said quietly. Teach me to be human. James looked at her, surprised, then smiled, that warm, genuine smile that made no logical sense. It's not about being human, Orla. It's about being us. And that starts with choosing love over calculation, hope over probability. Outside, the stars burned cold and eternal, but inside their quarters, two beings from different worlds held each other, and the universe trembled at the possibility of what they might build together. The Talvari had married Orla to a human for peace. They hadn't realized they'd created something far more dangerous. A bridge between logic and chaos, calculation and courage. The gods had been right to fear humanity. And now, with the Talvari learning human stubbornness and humans learning Talvari precision, the universe would learn to fear what came next.